Hello students, welcome to La Excellence. Welcome to the NCERT session where we'll be covering 9th standard NCERT book. Before you begin with this NCERT, my request to you is please try to ensure the basic concepts lecture which we have provided, go through that carefully once, so that it will be easy for you to understand certain concepts like Coriolis force, southwest monsoons, how does this change? All these concepts, whichever is important for you to understand this particular NCERT, will be beneficial. Till now, that is till 8th standard, even if you have not seen the basics, it's fine. But my suggestion to you, before starting this, please spend some time there and make a proper notes about the concepts that I have explained there, so that when you are reading this, it will become easy, right? So let's quickly look at Contemporary India 1, where we will be focusing on certain geographical aspects like the size and location, physical features of India, drainage, climate, natural vegetation, wildlife and population. All these concepts again we will be seeing in 11th standard NCERT book. So what we have done when it comes to recording here is, I have taken this 9th standard NCERT book and immediately after this I have done 11th standard NCERT book. So my suggestion to you, please see 9th and after that immediately you see 11th standard, because both are actually focusing on Indian geography, and here you get certain facts which is important and basic, but in 11th standard the concepts are much more elaborated. So that will help you to reduce time in actually reading this particular book, right? So let's take these books at a time and try to read. So first let me talk about the India's size and location, who are its neighbors and what are the actual points that you need to remember with respect to India's physical geography. So let's quickly begin with the first chapter where we speak about the location. It's very important for you to locate the latitude and longitudinal extents. UPSC has asked this not only in prelims but in mains whenever they talk about piracy and other issues which we usually observe in the world. Now, whenever we look at the longitude, here it is given that 68. So somewhere it comes here, right? So UPSC had asked that the piracy which is present near Somalia is actually moving eastwards, and they said it is almost at 55 degree. So if it is at 55 degree east longitude, the meaning of this is coming closer to India and this has become grave threat to India. So at that point of time, UPSC has actually asked with respect to latitude and longitude. Second important thing you also have to remember is with respect to the 82.5 degree standard time which India actually considers. And here there is a debate going on in the country with respect to this. Northeast India to Gujarat, if we actually consider, then we usually observe that the difference is almost 2 hours. But as we are actually taking 82.5, both sides are actually considering same time. And it is believed that with railways, with office time, and also most importantly doing trade with the neighboring countries like Myanmar, where Northeast is mainly dependent on those countries, we usually observe that their timing is not matching with India's timing. So because of this, it is having lot of issues in Northeast, and many people are actually requesting for 2 time zones in the country. So until and unless the time zones is notified by the country, it is important for you to go through this carefully, where you are talking about the longitudinal extent between east and west. So when we are talking about the longitudinal extent, please be careful that it is almost around 30 degree longitude. So when I say 30 degree longitude, the meaning of that is it has 2 hours difference, because 15 degree longitude is equal to 1 hour. We have seen this basic concept already, so please be careful with respect to longitude. And then I want you to see the states through which Tropic of Cancer passes. There are 8 states, I want you to locate them: Gujarat, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, West Bengal, Mizoram and Tripura. I want you to remember, UPSC may ask you which of the following states are on the same latitude. At that time, you should be aware of this, right? And then you need to know the southernmost point of India once was Indira Point, and during 2004 tsunami it is submerged. So Indira Point is no more the southernmost point of India. Whenever you are actually writing any essays with respect to India, to add points, you can actually say that India's area is 3.28 million square kilometer and it accounts to 2.4% of total geographical areas. For example, whenever we talk about BRICS, whenever we talk about Shanghai Cooperation Organization, we keep saying that India and Pakistan has joined Shanghai Cooperation Organization, so the area has increased, population has increased. These statements are usually given, so just go through that carefully once, so that whenever you are writing any essays, without doing any mistake, you will be giving these numbers. And then this fact is very, very important when we talk about 15,200 kilometer boundary line that India shares with neighboring countries. Here we are talking about land boundary. The meaning of that is what we have with Pakistan, China, Nepal, Bhutan. This is 15,200 kilometers. So why is it required? Whenever we talk about border management in internal security, it is very, very important for you to say the police forces or BSF forces are not in a position to guard the entire border because it is almost around 15,200 kilometers. The meaning of that is even if entire population goes and stand there, even then you will not be able to complete it. So you cannot guard it completely. When it comes to Coast Guard, we need to talk about 7,516.6 kilometer when we consider Andaman and Nicobar and Lakshadweep as well. Without that, it is 6,900 kilometers. These factual information may be given in statements. Consider the following statements with respect to India. So at that point of time, it is very, very important. And then you have to look at this particular paragraph where they are talking about Gujarat to Arunachal Pradesh. There is a time lag of 2 hours, I told you 30 degree. Hence time along standard meridian of India passing through Mirzapur in UP. This question can be asked. Please be careful. Prelims based factual question is taken as the standard time for the whole country. I want you to see the states through which 82.5 degree east longitude passes. The latitudinal extent influences the duration of day and night when one moves from south to north. And then I want you to look at India and the world, where this can be used in answers but not very, very important. At last, in page number 4, I want you to see India shares its land boundary with Pakistan and Afghanistan in the northwest. Most of the people get confused whether we need to consider Afghanistan as a country which has border with India because they feel that POK is not part of India. But officially India says that POK is part of India and Pakistan has illegally occupied it. So because of that, we claim POK as part of India's territory, and it is mandatory for you to write Afghanistan as a land border country with India. And then in next page you need to see Sri Lanka is separated from India by a narrow channel of sea formed by Park Strait and Gulf of Mannar. This is very, very important. The reason for this is whenever you are talking about fishermen issue, it is usually occurring at Park Strait and Gulf of Mannar, where India and Sri Lanka's exclusive economic zone overlaps. So this is very, very important area for you, right guys? So if you can go through this carefully, it is more than enough. I'll show you some other factual information with respect to maps when we take map based questions or map based areas separately. So at last, after all these NCERT books, I'll give you a map based lecture where we will be seeing what are the important areas that we need to remember when it comes to GS with respect to map pointings, right? So I hope this is clear. So let's quickly move to the next chapter. As I have told you, please try to see the basics where I have covered plate tectonics and also the Wegener's theory where we spoke about continental drift theory. There we have clearly seen that earlier all the continents were together and we call this to be Pangaea, and all the ocean was together, we call this to be Panthalassa. In between these two you got Tethys Sea, the upper portion was called as Laurasia and the lower portion was called as Gondwana land. India was actually part of Gondwana land, and we also observe that over a period of time when we consider plate tectonics, you have convergent boundary, divergent boundary and transform boundary. Indo-Australian plate converged with the Eurasian plate and this led to the formation of young fold mountains. That is what we say with respect to Himalayas. And then we usually see different structures in India associated with this. Most important chapter for prelims, please go through every line and it is important for us to understand what they have given here. In the first paragraph, the chapter actually talks about folding, faulting and volcanic activity which are associated with plate tectonics. And then when we actually talk about the plates, they talk about the major plates and minor plates which we have already seen. North American plate, South American plate, African plate, Eurasian plate, Indo-Australian plate, and you have Antarctica plate, correct? Then you have Pacific plate, right? Then we also have to see the smaller ones, Nazca plate, Cocos plate and other plates which are actually present in different parts of the world. And we have also seen continental is lighter and oceanic is heavier, right? After seeing that, we need to know that the peninsular India, which extends from Aravallis to Rajmahal Hills until Kanyakumari, right? Aravallis, Rajmahal Hills and Kanyakumari. This is called as Peninsular Plateau and it was actually part of Gondwana land, which included India, Australia, South Africa, South America and Antarctica as one single land. The convectional current split the crust into number of pieces and we have today the Indo-Australian plate which is moving towards north, correct? And then this plate is colliding with the plate of Eurasian, and as the Indo-Australian plate is heavier, it is actually going below. Can you see they are talking about the Tethys Sea were folded to form mountain system of Western Asia and Himalayas. That is, when the Indo-Australian plate went and hit the Eurasian plate, the sediments whichever was there in the Tethys Sea was compressed to form these mountain systems. So, here we are actually talking about the two plates. Let me take this as Eurasian plate and this as Indo-Australian plate. Now, the first important aspect that we usually observe is that the Indo-Australian plate went and hit the Eurasian plate at the edge. When I am talking about edge, only one side has hit. So, when only one side hit, at that region we got Trans-Himalayan mountain ranges, Karakoram mountain ranges. In between this, the Tethys Sea still had sediments. Now what happened? This entire gap which was actually there was filled in one go. When the gap was filled in one go, we usually see greater Himalayas being formed. But at that point, a subduction zone also came up. With further compression, we see that the sedimentary deposits which are present in the subduction zone again rised to become what we call lesser Himalayas. After the formation of lesser Himalayas, we also observe that again there is some sedimentation taking place on the western side and eastern side of India. When we look at the western side of India, because of Ganga, Satluj, Yamuna, all these rivers, more deposits are seen on the western side. But on the eastern side, only Brahmaputra river and its few tributaries are there. So because of this, more sediments were actually accumulated on the western side and less sediments were present on the eastern side. So if I have to draw a picture of this and show you, so I would say that first you had greater Himalayas and then you had lesser Himalayas, correct? Rivers started flowing in these regions, and in the western portion the sediments were more. When it comes to eastern portion, sediments were less. Now what happened? Again there was third upheaval. That is, the Indo-Australian plate went below the Eurasian plate. At that point of time, all these sediments were compressed to form what we call dunes, right? Now, if I show you the longitudinal version, so if I am talking about this as the lesser Himalayas, right, sedimentary deposits has taken place in this region. So this is your western side, this is your eastern side. Here the sediments are less. So now what happened? When the plates converged, we usually observe that you have this lesser Himalayas, you have some places in between, and you observe that Shivalik mountains are actually seen. Greater Himalayas, lesser Himalayas, and this is your Shivaliks. In between lesser Himalayas and Shivaliks, wherever the sedimentation was more, we usually observe dunes coming up. The meaning of this is, so if I am saying that these two are mountains, that is Shivaliks on one side and you have lesser Himalayas on one side, in between these two, right? So in between these two, I observe dunes being present. So this is your Dehradun, Mussoorie and other places. But when I am actually considering this place, there was some compression taking place, but this was not enough to form Shivaliks. So Shivaliks is absent on the eastern side, and at the same time it was not enough to form dunes. The structures which are present in this region are called as doors. So they give different spellings, doors or Dooars. So what did we see? I'll just explain clearly, right? So you had Eurasian plate. Please listen carefully, else it will be very difficult for you to understand the concepts later. First you have Eurasian plate. Indo-Australian plate was like this. Now this plate went and hit this region. You got mountains here. These mountains are called as Trans-Himalayas, and the best example of this is Karakoram mountain ranges. Is it fine? Now you had lot of sediments here, and this is called as your Tethys Sea, right? Now what happened? This portion started moving above. When this portion started moving above, the Indo-Australian plate subducted below Eurasian plate, and the sediments here, they rose. So if you have Eurasia and if you have Indo-Australia, first you got greater Himalayas. Above this you have Karakoram mountain ranges. Now what happened? Rivers started depositing sediments. More on the western side, less on the eastern side. And now what happened? We observe second upheaval. And this led to lesser Himalayas present in this region. Now again what happened? Sedimentation started. More here and less here. So let me draw a clear picture. I have Trans Himalayas, I have Greater Himalayas, I have Lesser Himalayas, right? In between, there were some regions where rock particles were present more, and there were some other region where they were present. So like this, small rocks structures were there and bigger one were there. And on the eastern side, you had very less sediments. Now we see third upheaval. The meaning of upheaval is convergence. When we saw third convergence, we usually observe these sediments were compressed to form other set of mountains, and these sediments were compressed to form dunes, and these were compressed to form dhoars, or you can see this just below Sikkim. Now how does these dhoars look? If you actually see the shape of these dhoars, they are slant like this, right? They are slant like this. As they are present like this, these dhoars are good for tea cultivation. This question was asked in UPSC, right guys? So this is very, very important for us. So after this, what happened? As Indian plate went for 3 convergence, just below Himalayas, there was a syncline formed like this. Fine? There was a syncline formed like this. And this syncline, what happened? Lot of sediment started depositing in this region. So this is what your Ganges plain today is all about. So what I am trying to say, can you see this? So earlier it was like this. It started hitting the Eurasian plate and started bulging like this. Rivers came and started depositing in this region. So usually whenever you look at India map, you usually observe that rivers, they start moving from Himalayan region to this place, and then from the plateau they move like this. They all join Ganga, Yamuna and other rivers, and they flow like this. So this is the reason why you usually observe that rivers, they actually move like this from top, they change their course like this, and then they go to Bangladesh. Can you see this? So wherever the slope is there, rivers start moving. From this side, you will also see some rivers coming and joining. This we will see in the drainage. But what I want you to know is, you have Trans Himalayas, Greater Himalayas, Lesser Himalayas, Shivaliks, and also you have the plain region present in this format. Whenever we are looking at the plain regions present in this format, sedimentation took place and different rocks are present at different parts. Even this we will be observing. Right? So after this basic understanding with respect to India's physical geography, let's quickly see what are the structures which are present in India. If we are actually looking at this particular paragraph, they actually say that in due course of time, there was a depression formed. Can you see this? The Himalayan uplift out of the Tethys Sea and subsidence of the northern flank actually created the formation of large basin. Sediments got gradually deposited by rivers in these depression, right? And a flat land of extensive alluvial deposits led to the formation of northern plains of India. In that depression, sedimentation took place and they have formed a plain region. So, if we are talking about UP, Bihar, West Bengal, they are nothing more than plains which are sedimentary deposits. And then we talk about the land blocks or the most stable block of India, that is the peninsular India. The Himalayas and the northern plains are the most recent landforms, whereas the peninsula is the oldest one present within India. We date back this to Gondwana land period as well. So we say Himalayas and plains are younger and their structures are newly formed, whereas these plains are the old one present. Then let us see these points one after the other. Here they try to tell what are the major physiographic features that are present in India. First important thing, they talk about the Himalayan mountains, which are geologically young. I have told you, young fold mountains means it is still growing. Structurally fold mountains stretch over northern borders of India. These mountain ranges run in a west-east direction from Indus to the Brahmaputra. You can see from Jammu and Kashmir to Arunachal Pradesh. The Himalayas represent the loftiest and one of the most rugged mountain barriers of the world. And they are in the form of arc and cover a distance of 2400 km, not very much required, but still read. You can see their width varies from 400 km in Kashmir to 150 km in Arunachal Pradesh. What is the reason? I told you sedimentary deposits were present more on the western side because you have Indus, Sutlej, Ganga, Yamuna, all these rivers, whereas on the eastern side the deposits are less, so width is also less. Most important factor, UPSC may give you the width of Himalayas decreases from west to east. Then the altitudinal variations are greater in the eastern half than those in the western half. These are the statements which they give. Consider the following statements with respect to Himalayas. The first statement would be with respect to width. The second statement is with respect to height. You see that the height differences is less on the western because sedimentary deposits were more. On the eastern side, sedimentary deposits was less. Due to this, height difference is more. That is, in few regions, the heights are less, and in few they are more. But in the west you can see almost everything is of the same height. The reason for this is more deposits take place on the west and less deposits were taking place in the east. Now when we are talking about, we talk about the three parallel ranges which are present. First is actually called as Great or Inner Himalayas or the Himadri. It is the most continuous range because I told you there was first Trans-Himalayas and a complete merge. When a complete merge actually took place, continuous mountain ranges were present and they are loftiest with an average height of 6,000 meters where most of the prominent Himalayan mountains are actually present. You can see the Karakoram mountain ranges. This is what I talked about, the Trans-Himalayan mountain ranges. Can you see here Greater Himalayas which are continuously present? But when you observe the Shivaliks, right, can you see some gaps here? The meaning of these gaps are there is no deposits present. And then can you see that Shivaliks is there only till Sikkim and after that you don't see. So you actually observe those present in this region. Then the folds of Great Himalayas are asymmetrical in nature. That is, it is not symmetrical. Symmetry means it comes like this. Asymmetrical means, so it keeps changing because when the compression takes place, the convergence will not lead to proper things. Himalayas is also made up of granite. The meaning of this is magma would have been joined in this region as I actually told you. You need to remember some of the important mountain ranges. Remember, Mount Everest is in Nepal, whereas India's largest range is Kanchenjunga. Second important one is Nanga Parbat. Third, Nanda Devi. At least 3 to 4 you need to remember. Then the range lying to the south of the Himadri is actually known as Himachal or Lesser Himalayas. The ranges are mainly composed of highly compressed and altered rocks. Altered means metamorphized rocks. The altitude varies from 3,700 to 4,500. The Pir Panjal mountain ranges forms the longest and the most important range. Most important factor with respect to prelims. Pirpanjal mountain ranges are the longest and the most important ranges. Then you have Dauladhar and Mahabharat ranges, which are also important. I want you to locate them. This range consists of famous valleys, that is Kashmir Valley is present, Kangra Valley, Kullu Valley is present, and it is also famous for its hill stations. Then we usually observe the outermost part called as Shivaliks. The width is only 10 to 50 kilometer and they have an altitude of 900 to 1100. You can see the height is reducing and also width is reducing. These ranges are composed of unconsolidated sediments brought down by rivers from the main Himalayan ranges located farther north. Did I say that rivers are getting these sediments? They were compressed to form Shivaliks. And in between this, the valleys are covered by thick gravel. They have the longitudinal valleys present between lesser Himalayas and Shivaliks. They are called as dunes. I have already told you about these dunes. That is, in between you saw some structures which were compressed and which raised. On the basis of river movements, these are actually divided into between Indus and Sutlej. It is traditionally known as Punjab Himalayas, but it is also known as Kashmir and Himachal Himalayas from west to east respectively. Then the part of Himalayas lying between Sutlej and Kali rivers are known as Kumaun Himalayas. Between Kali and Teesta is actually called as Nepal Himalayas. The boundary between Uttarakhand, Nepal and Sikkim is actually Kali and Teesta, but these have actually fluctuated, and between Teesta and Dihang rivers is known as Assam Himalayas. So this is very, very important. They may give you in match the following. That is, in between these two, which Himalayan mountain ranges are actually present. The Brahmaputra marks the easternmost boundary of the Himalayas, and beyond the Dihang Gorge, right, they curve and they give rise to Purvanchal or eastern Himalayas. Patkaibum, Naga Hills, Mizo Hills, all these are present in this, and they have composition of sandstones which are basically sedimentary rocks. The meaning of this is compression of sedimentary rocks have led to the formation of these mountain valleys. Did I tell you Patkai Hills, Naga Hills, Manipuri Hills and Mizo Hills, right? So this is very, very important. Then we need to look at some of the most important concepts, that is the northern plain. I told you in the bulge depositions took place and they led to the formation of plains. The northern plain has been formed by three major river systems, the Indus, Ganga and Brahmaputra, and these rivers bring alluvial soil. The deposition of alluvial soil has taken place over million of years and they have spread over 7 lakh square kilometer. Not required. The plain being 2,400 kilometer long and 240 to 320 kilometer broad is densely populated because it is made up of alluvial soil. UP Bihar has more population because of alluvial soil, and fertile soil leads to more agriculture and more people will usually settle there. And most importantly, we need to consider the depositional work. That is very, very important in this region. Then at the end, when the rivers actually join the ocean, we usually observe distributaries. The reason is you have ocean water, the river water moves and it spreads and they join. So at this point you see distributaries being present. The northern plain is broadly divided again into western part, which is called as Punjab plains, and then we usually observe the Punjab plain being usually dominated by Indus and its tributaries. The tributaries are Jhelum, Chenab, Ravi, Beas and Sutlej. Punjab, 5 rivers, these are very, very important. And you also have to know the meaning of Do-Ab. Whatever separates two river systems is called as Ab. As it is two river system, we call Do. And as Punjab is 5 river system, we call Panch Ab, right, which separates 5 river systems. The next important is the Ganga plain, which extends between Ghaggar and Teesta river, and the third one is the Brahmaputra plain. Indus plain, Ganga plain and Brahmaputra plain. This is very, very important. And after this, what we need to actually understand is with respect to the deposition that is taking place. Now, let me take boulders of different sizes. These are bigger. Now, let me take smaller boulders. Then let me take small sedimentary deposits. Fine. Now, my question to you, when I mix all these and when I try to allow it to settle in the water, then we observe that the heavier one will settle first and the lighter one will settle at the end. Similarly, when the rivers carry sediments, the larger portions are actually present closer to the Himalayas and the smaller one is present away, and the light particles will be deposited much farther. That is, you will have big particles first, smaller particles next, and the least or small size particles at the end. Now, rivers, whenever they flow over these regions, water disappears through these holes and they usually go below and they try to come out where the sediments are very small. The meaning of this is, when I have large particles, water disappears, and when I have small particles, water comes up. Whenever water comes up, this region will be fertile, and I call this region as Terai region. So, I am talking about different areas. First important area where big boulders are actually present. This is what I call it as Babbar belt, and after this the rivers re-emerge and create a wet, swampy and marshy region here where small particles are present, and this is what we call it as Terai region. Number of people who are present in Terai region is usually more. If we observe from Uttarakhand till West Bengal or Assam, we can see in this Terai region wildlife sanctuaries are present. You can observe Corbett, you can observe Dudhwa in UP, you can observe Valmiki in Bihar, Jalpaiguri in West Bengal, and you can also observe Kaziranga in Assam. All these are present along the Terai region, which is very good for cultivation as well. Rice cultivation is done here, and mostly agricultural laborers are present in this region. Now, first when we look at the plains, first what we observe is Babbar. Immediately after that, you see Terai region. After that, we usually observe small deposits taking place. And within the small deposits, the older alluvium will be called as Bangar, and the new alluvial or the new alluvium will be called as Kaddar. Fine. Older is called as Bangar, newer is called as Kaddar. If the old is having salt content present in it, we call it as Kankar. So guys, if I have Himalayas or Shivaliks, first I find larger particles. It is called as Babbar. And then I find smaller particles where water comes up. I call this region as Terai region. Then what happens? Sedimentary deposits takes place. Now this is called as old alluvium, or I would also call it as Bangar. New alluvium deposition takes place after this, called as Kaddar. Then we are actually looking at salt content being added to this, and this is called as Kankar. So I have Kankar, Bangar, Kaddar. Fine. Babbar, Terai, Bangar and Kaddar. So if salt is added to Bangar, I get Kankar. These names are also important, so please try to remember it carefully. We will be repeating again in the Indian climate 11th standard NCERT book, but just please try to ensure that you have this conceptual clarity, because in geography if 10 questions come, 6 questions will be from Indian geography itself. The peninsular plateau, when I am talking, it is the old crystalline, there it was young, both Himalayas and plains. It is made up of igneous and metamorphic rocks. Igneous means magma and metamorphic, compressed, pressurized. It is part of Gondwana land, thus it is the oldest. The plateau has shallow valleys and rounded hills. The meaning of that is it is old again. And this plateau can be divided into central highlands, that is Aravallis, Rajasthan to Bihar or Jharkhand, we call central highlands. Below that we call it as Deccan Plateau. The part of the peninsular plateau lying to the north of Narmada river is called as central highlands, where majority of Malwa plateau is present. The Vindhyan region is bounded by central highlands, and then below this what you get is actually the Deccan Plateau. Now when we actually consider only central highlands, we have to see this. Westward extension gradually merges with the sandy and rocky desert of Rajasthan. Rivers Chambal, Sindh, Betwa, Ken are the most important rivers which are present. In drainage, I will be going through this carefully, but I want you to know that plateau is divided into two parts. Central highlands above Vindhyas and Satpuras, below that you find Deccan Plateau. The central highlands are wider in the west but narrower in the east. The meaning of that is, usually from Maharashtra to Rajasthan, if you see, the width is more, but as you come closer to Bihar, the width reduces. So we usually see the width reducing. So it is usually like this. So the width is more in the western side and it is less in the eastern side, right? I want you to locate Bundelkhand, Baghelkhand and other plateaus, and I also want you to see Chotanagpur Plateau, which is drained by Damodar river. Each one of this you will be able to remember over a period of time when I revise, but in this book you need to know with the help of map. Please have physical geography map of India and please try to locate these places whichever I am marking. And then the Deccan Plateau is a triangular landmass which is present south of Narmada, and the Satpura range flanks its broad base in the north, while the Mahadeo, Kaimur and the Michael ranges are present in the eastern extensions. Please locate Mahadeo hills, Kaimur hills, Michael ranges, right? Even they have given, please locate it. The Deccan Plateau is higher in the west and slopes gently in the east. The meaning of this is, it is somewhere like this, and because of this you usually see western Ghats here, eastern Ghats here, rivers move in this direction, right? So it is something like this. Now this is not only present till Jharkhand, but it is extended till the Karbi Anglong Plateau, Meghalaya Plateau and North Chachar Plateau, but this is separated from the Chotanagpur Plateau by a gap called as Malda Gap. I want you to observe a simple thing, that is, Ganga actually flows first from north to south, but because of the geosyncline or because of the depression, we usually observe that the Ganga river starts flowing like this. Once it reaches the Chotanagpur Plateau and the northeastern, in between this there is a small gap which is like this. So usually it looks like this. Now what happens? The river starts moving in this direction. So it goes and joins Bay of Bengal. Why this turn? This turn is because at that point we usually say, see, it is like this. So this is one plateau, this is one plateau, in between you have a depression. So Ganga river, which is moving like this, will start moving like this and it enters into Bay of Bengal. And this gap is known as Malda Gap. And then you will usually observe Western Ghats and Eastern Ghats. Western Ghats are closer and parallel. They are almost continuous. Only you have few gaps like Talgat Gap, Borgat Gap and Palgat Gap. These gaps are very, very important because through these gaps, some areas on the eastern side of India or eastern side of Western Ghats receive rainfall. And then we need to know that Western Ghats are higher than Eastern Ghats. If they ask you to compare Western Ghats and Eastern Ghats, these are important. Their average elevation varies. The Eastern Ghats stretch from Mahanadi Valley to the Nilgiris in the south. Where does Western Ghats and Eastern Ghats meet? It meets at Nilgiris. The Eastern Ghats are discontinuous. That is, we usually say you have one in Odisha, one in Andhra Pradesh, one in Tamil Nadu. In between, Krishna, Godavari, Kaveri and other rivers flow. But on the western side, the gaps are usually less. The Western Ghats cause orographic rainfall and they give heavy rainfall. We have seen climatology, orographic, right? And when we talk with respect to Indian monsoons, we will be covering all these portions again. The Western Ghats are given different names locally. The highest of the Western Ghats progressively increases from north to south. The most important thing is, highest peaks include Anaimudi, Doddabetta and Mahendragiri is the highest in Eastern Ghats. You have Shevarai Hills and Javadi Hills which are located southeast of the Eastern Ghats. So this is very, very important. And then we need to talk about Indian desert. So Indian desert receive rainfall less than 150 millimeter per year. Why desert is present here? I will be explaining with the help of climate. Here you have less vegetation and most of the streams appear only in the rainy season. Rivers will flow only in the rainy season, else you won't see that at all. Luni is the only large river in this region. Then the Barchans or crescent shaped dunes I have already shown in the World Physical Geography, where the depositional features of sand or wind we see Barchans, it is significantly present. Next, let us take the coastal plains. When I talk about the coastal plains, if you have India, if you have Western Ghats and the region to the west of Western Ghats and the region to the east of Eastern Ghats is called as coastal plains. So when I am talking about this, I need to understand that the northern part of the coast is called as Konkan coast between Mumbai to Goa, and then it is called as Kannada coast or Kannad coast, and then you have Malabar coast at the bottom. This is your Konkan coast, Kannad coast and Malabar coast. And then when we are talking on the eastern side, you have northern Sarkars in Odisha and you have Coromandel coast in Tamil Nadu and some parts of Andhra Pradesh. Lake Chilka is the most important feature which is actually present. Then we need to talk about Lakshadweep, which is actually present closer to the Malabar coast of Kerala, and these island groups are usually made up of coral reefs. So I have already explained you coral reefs, it is important for you to locate it. Please try to see this. We have already seen what are coral reefs and what are the best examples of coral reefs. This is very, very important. Pitti Island, which is uninhabited and has a bird sanctuary here. Then we talk about Andaman and Nicobar, right? And these are volcanic and they also have some coral reefs present. These islands lie close to the equator and experience equatorial type of climate and has rich forest cover. So guys, we saw Himalayas, Trans Himalayas, Greater Himalayas, Lesser Himalayas, Shivaliks. In between you saw dunes, and then we saw plains where deposition actually took place. We saw Babbar, Terai, Bangar and then Kaddar. If you add salt to Bangar, it became Kankar. And then we saw plateau being divided into central highlands above Narmada, Deccan plateau below Narmada. You have Western Ghats, you have Eastern Ghats. Western Ghats is divided into Konkan, Kannada coast and Malabar coast. On the eastern side, you actually gave Coromandel coast and northern Sirkars. and then you have Lakshadweep made up of coral reefs, Andaman and Nicobar which is volcanic and also coral is present in this region. As Andaman and Nicobar is closer to equator, equatorial climate is present in this region. So if we can see all these, again we'll be repeating when we see in class 11th. So if you can go through this, it will be easy. Now I want you to close this and try to open Atlas and identify all these places that we have marked. Remember guys, if you have to remember geography through maps, especially with respect to India, these are the places which we need to cover. UPSC has always asked you, where is Bundelkhand present, Malwa present? So at that point of time, it would be easy for you to locate, right? So next, let's quickly take the next chapter, which is very, very important for us.